I just ate butterflies, a brain, a lung, a tongue, live insects, and my own face at this restaurant. I wasn't kidding. Oh, and there's also a ball pit. This is a 50 course, yes, 8-hour long, $1,000 meal. And it's the weirdest restaurant in the world. And I genuinely believe that they're going to change the world. This is what it's like to dine at Alchemist. Over a year ago, I made a video on the experience at Alchemist, which you all loved. It's based in Copenhagen, has 2 Michelin stars, and is currently number 5 in the world. And today we are back, except this time we're gonna go behind the scenes of this crazy restaurant, everywhere from the test kitchen to the plateware and VFX teams. We're gonna sit down with the chef himself to find out how this place even exists. Oh, and of course we are going to have dinner, and it's even wilder than before. The restaurant is immense. It's in this giant warehouse, and even the doors themselves to get in are massive. I mean, talk about a grand entrance. But as soon as you step in, you really have no idea what's going to happen. I arrived a few hours before the restaurant opened to see how the team prepared, but first I wanted to find out how this restaurant came to be, and there's no better person to tell that story than the chef himself, Rasmus.
For me, there was a need for creating a restaurant like this where it's more focused on the experience part than food, but it's a combination of this more holistic thinking, from the ingredients to the curation of that, to the aesthetic of the plates and the design of the tableware, to the content that's made for the dome. So there's many layers into it, and I think that was for me the most important, to create this more immersive experience.
We're going to see in just a little bit how art and science and food all come together on the plate, but it turns out the plates that they actually use here are also pretty interesting. Whether it's this eyeball dish, this brain dish, or even the netting for their lobster roll, we took a look at all the plates that Alchemist has.
My work consists of making their dreams come true. Right now we are working on cutlery and trying to go with very traditional materials, but at the same time, we like to explore.
And yes, some of this plateware is already amazing, but the experimentation that they're doing with new forms of plateware takes it over the edge.
So this is basically the SCOBY that you need to brew kombucha. I just took the SCOBY and just dried it on some piece of plaster that had different structures. Mycelium is mushroom roots. Fungi, those networks basically can create a very strong structure. So when you dry it out, you get this kind of material. They were using a lot of cocoons, and we landed up on basically stretching the cocoons over a frame. So I kind of made some kind of tray out of it.
The fact that there's an industrial engineer here working on creating plateware is already fascinating, and we'll check back in here in a little bit, but I also wanted to see how the visual effects at Alchemist were made. One of the most memorable parts of the Alchemist experience is the dome, which is where they have these sprawling visuals all around you as you eat, and all of these visuals are made by these 2 filmmakers here.
With normal filmmaking, you can compose stuff, you just make it fit the camera angle, and so whatever goes on around doesn't matter, but here it has to look great all around.
But what impressed me the most was actually that this team doesn't really work like a restaurant. In fact, they work much more similarly to a tech company.
For mood boards and ideas, we want to go in the color schemes, the visual elements, and then we start evaluating it. How unique is it? How much does it reference a serving or a dish? Do we want the guest to feel very much included into the experience? We look at it like a theater play.
So dinner is in less than 2 hours, but with a 50-course menu as experimental as this one, you're probably wondering, how do they even create these dishes? Well, it turns out it's a small team of just 5 people that come up with all of the dishes that you have here at Alchemist. And every single day, they do a taste test with Rasmus to refine what they're working on.
The green paste have this kind of like wasabi-ish. That's the only thing I think may be missing in this one.
And one of my favorite moments that encapsulates Alchemist's philosophy was when they were testing out their corn dish.
I would suggest, if you don't mind, if you bit into it.
When do you eat them? Bite into it is 90 degrees. You first. It's not that bad. It's better than it's been.
I've tried everything below. One of my, I made
You
the
only
cheese.
worked with this for like 2 months. You've not tried everything else.
It's that philosophy of being open to exploring every single possibility in the world to create the perfect dish that makes Alchemist so special. And as we approached dinner, the team was putting their final touches on their preparation. By the way, getting these types of inside looks and getting to chat with the chef takes a lot of time and effort. So if you like these kinds of videos, definitely subscribe below to see more of the craziest food around the world. Now, I don't know if you've seen a performer at a restaurant before, but Alchemist of course has one, because why not? You have to see her role in the dinner to come.
I guess it's about how to read people. Do they look like they want to hide? There's always someone who is more open and curious, or else I have to do something more myself and try to like loosen them up.
And while she was getting ready for her performance, the rest of the team was down in the lounge for a rundown of the guest list that night. It really is like a little army getting ready for battle. They end with a service, and it's showtime.
I am so freaking excited. Our minds are about to be blown.
So dinner began in one of the weirdest ways imaginable.
How do you see yourself? Identity.
It's a room about identity, about who you are and who we are as people. And afterwards we were led into the lounge for an accompanying bite, which was basically this like black reflective mirror made with oxidized apples. The meal officially started with their daisy, which is the national flower of Denmark. It's a spherified cocktail that you eat in one bite. It explodes in your mouth and it's really bright, refreshing, and a perfect way to start the meal. This was followed by their smoky ball with puffed gluten, almond milk, a langoustine tartare, and caviar, and it was called a smoky ball for obvious reasons. Now the lounge is supposed to get you acquainted with the menu, kind of ease you into it. But this next dish was sort of the opposite of that, because we were eating actual butterflies. Not a dish that looks like a butterfly, but actual butterflies sitting on top of a kale chip. It's about finding sources of sustainable protein because apparently butterflies are 70% protein.
I've never eaten a butterfly before. Whoa, the texture that you'd imagine a butterfly to be kind of has a little bit of that texture. That's really freaking weird, but really freaking cool.
Afterwards, we went back to dishes that were a bit more manageable, like this dumpling where the outside was made with Japanese cotton candy and the inside had this Thai namjim chili sauce, which was this really interesting combination of sweet and spicy flavors. And the next dish was actually a collaboration with NASA where they created space bread with 10,000% air, I don't even know what that means, and aged soy sauce. It has structure and a crunch, but then just disappears in your mouth once you eat it and leaves you with this punch of umami flavor. Now, it's well known that the ultimate test of a chef is whether they can make an amazing omelet or not. So this is Rasmus's attempt at the perfect omelet.
We have the membrane that's made of the egg yolk. The Lewis addition is infused it with black pepper with the help of sound wave machine. We have it in for like 2 hours, and then it extracts all of the pepper into it, and we then infuse it into the skin.
So eggy, yet so smooth, it just oozes out of your mouth. Oh, that is the perfect omelet.
Afterwards, we took a little trip to Spain with one of Rasmus's all-time favorite dishes, the bikini sandwich. Here it's made with jamón ibérico, some Gruyere cheese that's stretchy and melty on the inside, an exterior of mochi for a little bit of that chewiness, and truffle. There are some dishes coming up that use really weird ingredients or have some sort of deeper meaning or message. This one was one that is just purely about creating one of the most delicious bites of food you'll ever have in your life. And they succeeded.
That is nuts. Warm, gooey, delicious, chewy. Oh.
We finished with a frozen sea buckthorn tonic, and with that, our experience in the lounge came to a close. Now, this next room is where a lot of dishes start to have meaning. A lot of people think that a restaurant's goal should just be to serve food, but Alchemist believes that a restaurant's impact can go so far beyond that. Yes, they try to educate diners in the restaurant on parts of food that might be troubling or unknown, but my favorite thing about the restaurant is they're working on all these different projects that are actually outside of the restaurant altogether.
A project we have with the hospital in Copenhagen, where we right now is designing and creating food for a new kids hospital, and to a homeless organization called Junk Food that we created where there was the first lockdown of COVID, to more scientific research within space food, new kind of fungal strains that you can ferment into something where you can create sugar taste without using sugar. All of it have a common vision of changing the world through gastronomy and using this platform as wisely as we can.
What they're doing is extremely ambitious, but it's time for the menu to really pick up under the dome. And trust me, it just gets weirder and weirder. The first section in the dome is focused on seafood. You have visuals all over the dome with a beautiful yet haunting display. A turtle circling around the dome with plastic around its neck, a beautiful coral reef that slowly bleaches over time. We started with what looked like a Japanese shaved ice, but but turns out it was actually made with squid, and underneath it, it had a Peruvian chili sauce made with green habaneros for a little bit of that fruity and spicy kick to pair with that savory umami seafood flavor of the squid. To transition to the next course, we had an absolutely bonkers visual with all of these eyeballs exploding out of the dome on the screen, so you could probably guess what the next dish was. It's a dish called 1984 about privacy and surveillance.
But inspiration from George Orwell. If we look 70 years back, that was the time that he actually wrote his novel about a society where no privacy was left. Today, it will certainly be most of the relevant debates.
After this, we had a dish called Marine Invaders, which uses invasive species like sea urchin that harm local ecosystems. And then we had a dish that we actually saw in the test kitchen. It was that corn dish, which is called cachapa, which are normally like pancakes, but they've turned it into a fermented and aerated corn cream that they fry and fill with cheese made with habanero juice and raw milk. It was spicy, creamy, crunchy, and cheesy all at once, and just perfection. The next dish is a simple concept, but of course they needed to put their own spin on it. It's a lobster roll, which is one of Rasmus's favorite dishes, but it's turned into the shape of a lobster claw and sits on top of this netting, which actually has a pretty interesting story.
The inspiration there was they are catching lobsters with the fishnets, wooden kind of constructions, at least they used to.
Now, one of the biggest issues with our planet today is plastic waste, specifically plastic waste in the oceans. And this next dish was a perfect representation of that.
The design of it is representing this kind of like vacuum that there exists in the center of the ocean currents. In that vacuum, all the ocean plastic is collected, and that puts an effect onto the entire food chain. We are introducing you to plaice, one of the most traditional fish to eat here in Denmark. Battered it into a tempura batter and serve it with a plastic which is edible, and it's made from algae.
Nice and crunchy, really well balanced. I like it a lot.
We finished this section with a king crab tail dish that's meant to highlight how even with some of the most luxurious ingredients like a king crab, there are still parts that we don't use, like the tail. It's paired with scallops, a spicy glaze of tomato sauce, and an exo sauce made with more of that tail. Okay, this is where the dishes start to get a little more challenging. It's the part of the meal where there might be one or two dishes that people in the room might not want to eat. But as an adventurous eater, I have to eat everything. So without further ado, let's dive in to the craziest part of the meal. We started off by kissing a tongue where there's all these different flavors both on top and on the bottom of the tongue, and we had to try to guess what those flavors were. It literally hit every single flavor that's possible. Then we had a dish where I don't even know how to describe it.
You will not believe what this next dish is. It's me. It's literally me. I mean, look at it. They 3D printed it specifically for me. Normally it's a Frida Kahlo. It took them 3 days to do this. My mind is blown. Michael eating Michael. This is about to happen. I'm so happy.
Genuinely, I wanted to cry because I have never been treated like this at a restaurant before. Rasmus himself came over and said that he was looking through my Instagram to try to find the perfect photo, and it was just, I can see why they won the World's Best Hospitality Award this year. And the dishes, believe it or not, kept getting crazier with their next dish called burrata.
Burrata style, but it's made with these bugs. It's the bugs that are living upon the tomato plants. They can coagulate milk as well. We put in this box, and then it actually will start coagulating the milk. After 2 days, it gets this like kind of cheesy texture.
Oh, that one's one of my favorites so far.
After this, we were presented with a prosthetic head, of course, with threaded eyebrows and a lamb brain dish on the inside. It's a dish called Food for Thought, and it's about accepting the idea that it's okay to eat some of the offcuts from animals, like lamb brain, to be more sustainable. It's a lamb brain brined in milk on top of a deep-fried piece of brioche. Now, the next dish was one of my favorites of the night, but I don't have any footage because this is the one dish where they request that you just fully immerse yourself in it and experience it in the moment. It's a dish called Cheers. They present everyone at the same time with a drink, and they ask you basically just to cheers the room and enjoy the moment. Then as soon as everyone's glasses are lifted up, all the lights go off, all the drinks are glow in the dark. So all you see are these floating little lights around the room, and it's one of the coolest experiences that I've ever had. It's a drink made from melon and bioluminescent algae that they're working with researchers on to see if they can turn it into a stable light source. Insane. We continued with another one of those dishes that was just pure deliciousness. An airy bread made with layers of potato starch that they've brushed with roasted yeast and brown butter. Then they freeze it in a vacuum so it expands and puffs up and becomes this really light and airy bread. They top it with a little little bit of an egg yolk creme fraiche cream, and of course, some jamon iberico. And from this bite, we moved to another dish called hunger.
It's meant to illustrate some of the biggest paradoxes in our globalized food systems. We are at this strange point where we produce more than the food we actually need to feed the entire world population. But at the same time, the number of people who live in hunger every day is actually rising. We're serving you rabbit, cured filet. We serve it together with these North African flavors of harissa.
It's a dish with a powerful message, followed by another dish called burnout chicken, which is about caged animals. We had to free the chicken from the cage in order to eat it. It's served with the entire foot, and even though the presentation was a bit jarring, the flavors were actually really familiar. A mix of tangy, sweet, and umami with a really tender chicken underneath. And the last savory dish of the night was a chicken foot that you could eat whole.
We take the feet out and then put them in a liquid, consists of salt and then the different enzymes. Enzymes go in and break down the bones so it can make it edible, the small bones in the feet. It's been glazed into this fish carom, it's made of a fish sauce. And then on the side is this one version of a tom yum soup.
Whoa. Sweetness from the fish sauce caramel on the outside. That is incredible.
Now you might be thinking that heading into desserts is where we can start to go back to comforting dishes, but the single dish that is sent back the most on this menu is still to come. We started desserts like we started the meal with this reflective ice cream sandwich made with black currant. It's then followed by a dish that's inspired by Andy Warhol and the Velvet Underground with a banana ice cream, jasmine and hibiscus foam, some tonka bean, and a South American rum with a shell that's 3D printed. It's got that pure banana flavor that's accented by the light and floral flavors of jasmine and hibiscus and the sharpness of the South American rum. But the next dish was by far my favorite of the night, and it was called Lifeline.
It's a dessert that was invented in the first lockdown of COVID, where there was a big shortage and demand of donating blood. So it's this little blood drop of ice cream. The ice cream itself is made of pig's blood. So we caramelize the blood to get this very chocolate notes, and then fill it up with a little jam that's made of wild blueberries in Sweden. There's a little QR code as well on the plate, so you can sign up to become a blood donor at the same time.
The blueberry is really nice. The blood kind of gives it that just a little bit of irony flavor. Really, really beautiful. Amazing message. Oh.
And finally, we finished with another dish with an amazing story called Guilty Pleasure. This is a chocolate bar, except on the back of the wrapper, there are all these facts about slave labor in the chocolate industry. The bar itself is in the shape of a grave, and Alchemist is actually working with a chocolate producer to figure out what is an ethically sourced chocolate bar and how do you actually have traceability all the way back to the individual farmer.
Guilty pleasure, the message behind it is really great. Very visceral, really makes you feel it. It's fruity, it's nutty, it's chocolatey. Everything you want in a last bite, kind of the culmination of all the bites that we've had before it. Wow.
Now, just when I thought the dinner was over, they told us to give us any belongings that might fall, and then instructed us into this room for the next part of our experience.
Oh my god.
I can safely say that I have never jumped into a ball pit at a fine dining restaurant. In fact, the last time that I jumped into a ball pit at a restaurant was probably McDonald's when I was a kid, and this is a little bit better than that. The meal finishes with little bites in their upstairs lounge like this ants trapped in amber, their golden tarte tartin, and tea made by their tea master. We were lucky enough to be offered one of their rarest teas from the private collection. You finish down the elevator in a room with all these adjectives and emotions to close out your self-reflection, and with that, the night was over. But what's next? Alchemist is a truly special place, and I firmly believe that it is the best restaurant in the world, and it definitely will be #1 on the list soon. But I had to ask Rasmus what he felt was next for Alchemist.
I think there's always a lot of inspiration take within other fields and try to merge it into the gastronomy world. We created a company now called Spore, which is an innovation center where we try to push food technology and help bigger corporations to make a better agenda and better products in the end of the day, so we can impact millions of lives than just 50 guests.
I cannot tell you how incredible this place is, so hopefully I was able to show a little bit of that to you. If you want to see some of the craziest foods from around the world, make sure to follow along below. Let me know where I should go next, but for now, I'll see you later.